mentioned before, homework in an online class, on average, doesn't look too much differently than it would in a face-to-face class. And because I'm not able to give you specific, this is how you do homework in this discipline and this is how you do homework in this discipline, I'd like to just address some of the things that I know are difficult to transition from a face-to-face setting to an online setting. And one of those, the first and foremost one that people struggle with, is discussion. So let's talk about that now. When you have a face-to-face discussion with your students, there is nothing better in the world when you see those light bulbs going off in people's brains, or you see students make connections with other people's thoughts that they've never thought of before. Now, I want to remind you, these things can still happen in an online class. Students are still making all of those connections. Discussions are one of the best ways that you can get your students interacting with online content. But discussions, when done poorly, really can be a big drag on your online class. So I want to talk about some of those strategies now. Now, I have a text version of some tips for making an online discussion a little bit more engaging. This is if you were to do the classic and traditional approach to online discussions where you post a prompt and students respond to each other. They respond to the prompt and then they respond to each other. So some of those tips include making sure you're checking the purpose of the assignment and always bringing everything back to objectives like I mentioned so often. So if you're wanting students to hear other students' perspective, obviously you need them to respond to each other. But if you're just wanting to do some maybe inner reflections, then maybe the students don't need to respond to each other. They just need to post themselves and then maybe read what others are thinking. Some other advice is to break your students into smaller groups. If you have a class that's over 100 students, then it might be better suited to have smaller groups of maybe 15 or 20 students that are having conversations. Give very clear guidance and expectations. If you want your students to respond within a certain amount of time, those instructions have to be very clear to the student from day one so that they know when they have to respond to things. Using things like scoring rubrics really come in handy when it comes to discussion board posts, because you can tell the students what an example of a poor quality post looks like and a high quality post looks like. You can provide those examples for them so they know exactly where they stand when they create their own posts. You can prompt action within the post, so there's other activities that can come from these initial discussions, such as research papers or video reactions or things of that nature that you can also have your students do. Also make sure that you have really well-worded prompts that are not just asking for a yes or no question, or are not just having the students supply a yes or no response to the other students' posts. So be very strategic and careful in how you structure the way the prompt is presented so that it's very much open-ended and unbiased so the students can put their guttural responses on whatever you're asking. Also, always be sure that you insert some sort of netiquette guidelines.